Today, we're going to go over 4 tips on how you can become a more effective inviter. If you're a small group leader or you belong to a small group, chances are you want to invite some of your friends, family, or coworkers to come to your group. You want them to come to know Jesus the way you have. I've got 4 tips for how you can become a better, more effective inviter. Tip number 1, pray for the person you're inviting. Praying is a good place to start. Ask the Lord to put on your heart a friend, family member, coworker, doesn't matter who it is. It never fails to ask God who He wants you to invite to your small group. Getting on your heart what's on God's heart for who to invite is actually a really great way to figuring out who you're going to invite. Pray for them, pray for a week, praying for their family. I'm praying for them. I'm praying they would come to know Christ. I'm praying that God would do a work even now, working out situations, maybe giving them dreams, putting things on their heart that would kind of open their heart to being ready to say yes to your invitation. The other thing that praying does for you is it gives you a love for the person you're inviting. Oftentimes when we start praying for somebody, God puts His love for that person into our heart. We begin to think of them differently. They're no longer just a neighbor. They're somebody beautiful and somebody special, somebody loved by God, created with purpose, with great care and great creativity. So praying for people, that's my number 1 tip for becoming more effective in inviting people to your group. Tip number 2, build relationship. We underestimate the value of relationship when we're inviting. If you're inviting somebody who you barely talk to or you don't know much about their life, you don't really have a place in their lives, a lot of times that invitation doesn't really go anywhere. So the one thing you can do to improve the chances of a person responding to your invitation is build a relationship. So let's just say it's your neighbor. One thing you can do is invite them to something else. Invite them to a barbecue. Maybe you're gonna do something in the backyard, have some kids over, maybe they have some kids, invite their kids to come over. Maybe you got a pool or a trampoline, just invite them over to have fun first. Develop relationship, get to know them. Maybe do something kind for them. You know, you could bake them some brownies. Who knows? Kathy and I, we walk our dogs around the neighborhood, and oftentimes we'll just stop to talk to a neighbor. If they're out in the yard, we'll say hello, introduce ourselves if we don't know them. Try to drum up conversation where we can get to know them and they can get to know us. We'll share some stories, listen to their stories, and really it's the icebreaker that begins to develop a more meaningful relationship so that when you do invite, the chances of them responding are much better. Tip number 3, discover their why. You may have in your heart an idea of why some person should be in your group. Obviously, if they don't know Christ, you want them to know Jesus, but maybe they don't necessarily want to know Jesus. They don't want to go into a religious thing, but maybe they do have a reason why they should be a part of your group. And so by getting to know a person, this dovetails off of tip number 2, developing relationship. In those conversations that you have with somebody, you want to listen for their why. In other words, why would they come to your group? What would motivate them to come? So here's a good why. Maybe in talking with them, you just discover that they're really unhappy at their job and they just don't know whether they should stay at their job. Maybe they have a mean boss or they've been at the job for 30 years and they're just unhappy. And so there's this overall sense of feeling unhappy, unfulfilled. Well, that could be their why to come to the group. Maybe you get talking about it and share testimony. Maybe somebody in the group has discovered something more meaningful in life than just their job. For a lot of people, their job is their life. So when the job isn't going good, their life's not going good. But now that we know Christ, even if our job isn't going good, our life can still be going great because Christ is doing great, so we can do great. discovering their why. Get to know them, find out, what's going on in their lives, talk about your life, and listen for their why. Usually when a person has a why to come to your group, when you invite them, they're gonna say yes and come because they have a compelling why. Tip number 4, and this probably goes without saying, but you gotta demonstrate that you care. Because there's an old adage out there, I'm sure you've heard of it, people don't care what you know until they know you care. So demonstrate that you care. They may not have any interest in being religious, they might not have any interest in reading the Bible or doing a Bible study or prayer group, particularly if they know you don't really care. You're just trying to get them to come to your house. They have just a bad impression of Christians. Honestly, as Christians, we really should demonstrate that we love one another because we should be known by our love for others. So this probably should have been tip number 1, to be honest with you, because if people can see Christ in you, then they'll want what you have. So demonstrate that you care. Go over, do something nice. If it looks like their lawn is getting really long, offer to mow their lawn. Maybe you discover that they're gonna go on vacation and they have a dog. Offer to watch the dog. There's a number of things that you can do. You can ask God to show you how to demonstrate that you care. Maybe, like I said earlier, maybe you just bring over some brownies or a cake or something and just say, hey, you know what? I was making this cake today and I was saying a prayer and God told me to bring this over to you and just bless you today. Because you're an awesome neighbor and I'd really like to get to know you more. I think you're amazing. I know God thinks you're amazing. And so here's a cake, enjoy. Eat it knowing that I made it in love for you. Things like that go a long way. And when a person feels like you actually really care about them, then chances are when you invite them to come to your group, they'll be more responsive to that invitation and probably come. So I hope those tips have been helpful for you, valuable. Write them down, practice them. The best thing to do is just practice. Practice, practice, practice. Try these things out with your neighbors, try them with your coworkers, family members. Be sincere, be love, and let them see Christ in you, and they will want what you have. I hope these tips were helpful for you. We'll see you next time when we talk about how to make your group ready for non-believers to come. Until then, get out there and go make some disciples.